Well, good morning and hello. Welcome to our Engage Talent Strategy series, where we discuss how to build strong people strategy around hiring, teams, leadership, and culture. Basically, if you are a leader, you most likely have a business strategy. Do you have a talent or a people strategy to align that? And that's what we're talking about in this series. I'm talking about it from the perspective of the business. Elizabeth has been bringing the employee perspective. And in all of this, we've been having really interesting conversations around hiring, building strong teams, building leaders. And today we're going to be talking about building culture. I am your host, Michelle Alexandrowitz. I am CEO of Engage, an expert in psychology in the workplace. Engage is a boutique consulting company that uses psychological science and people data to solve business problems. And I am joined today with Elizabeth Miller, founder of Talk with ECM. She is a communication and verbal branding expert. So this marks the fourth of the fifth session where we're going to give you an overview of the talent model. And this is so that you can build a strong people strategy that supports your business strategy and ultimately your goals. So as experts in people and communication, we are very excited to take you on this journey. So thank you for being with us today. Drop a comment below. Let us know where you're coming in from. Say hello, send us a like. This helps us understand, how to take the direction of the conversation.
Also, a few logistical notes and a little teaser for those of you who are just listening in now. Today, we're going to be talking about the real cost of not paying attention to culture or letting culture go on its own. So listen to the end because it gets really juicy there. Also, apologies for my voice. It's a bit scratchy that time of year. And if you're listening on the road or moving around, kind of doing a couple things at once, use the icons at the bottom of your screen. Just hit a heart or something. Let us know you're listening. Make it simple and easy, but be careful driving. Don't touch your
Yeah,
phone
eyes
if
on
you're
the road.
driving. Just saw a message from Sherry. Good
Good
morning from
morning,
South
Sherry from
Florida.
South Florida. Sherry is an expert in the people and culture space. So if she drops some wisdom on us today, pay attention. That girl has some solid experience. All right. So let's get started. Last week, we talked about what it looks like to develop leaders, and that was a really interesting conversation. So go check that video out. It's in the series. And today, we're going to be talking about how to measure and manage your culture. Those two things go hand in hand. So we're going to be unpacking that. We want to spend a little bit of time talking about what is culture. So culture can be very abstract, it's very expansive, it's very big, it's not very tangible. So to kind of get the conversation started, we're going to talk a little bit about like what is culture and like what does that mean. We have an expression that we use here at Engage all of the time. So if you are a student of Peter Drucker has a very famous quote where he said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. Peter Drucker says that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So what that means is you can have the best business strategy in the world, but if you do not have the culture to support and sustain that work, it doesn't matter how good your business strategy is because your culture will eat it alive. So we're going to take some time to talk about that today. Have you heard that expression before, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's so powerful. And especially since I work with people who are caught in the thick of failing cultures. Or
Ooh.
mismatched cultures is probably a better way to put it. But first, I
Mm.
want to say something about Nicole. Nicole is listening in from Atlanta,
Hey, Nicole, good
Georgia.
morning.
Good
Thank you for
morning, good
joining
morning,
us
good
today. Another
morning.
expert in the room.
Love it.
Awesome.
Love it that we can meet like this, starting off the day, kicking off together, looking for synergies. And this in LinkedIn, if you look on the tabs, you can also look to network with other people who are here listening in
That's right.
after the meeting. Don't do it now. Focus on what we're talking about. Drop your icons, drop your questions, and join us. I think I think what you mentioned is so important, Michelle. What is culture?
Mm-hmm.
People throw it around. It's a cultural problem. It's not a cultural problem. What is culture exactly? Well, it's everything. Well, it's nothing. Can we unpack that?
Yeah.
Just to make sure we're all on the same page here for this
Yeah, let's do it.
conversation.
Exactly. So, usually when we bring up culture and we have those initial conversations, and this is where the experts in the room, please drop a comment below. Like, what do you think culture is? Because your voice and your language is going to make a big difference here. Excuse me. So, I think the first thing we think of when we talk about culture is it's the values, the beliefs, the behaviors of an organization, group of people. We're going to talk about it in the work environment or, context today. So things like, what are your policies? What are your rules? What's the org structure? Are you a hierarchy that's very rigid? Are you a flat organization where you have no boss and you can have autonomy in where your work goes? What are the organizational values? Most people have company values plastered on the wall somewhere. And for most companies, those values are just like a dusty poster. But what culture really is the manifestation and the embodiment of those values.
How
So when
you
you
live
think
it
about
out.
how you work, how you
Yeah.
make decisions, how you engage with other people, it's stemmed from some kind of value. And those values start to make up what the culture looks like, all of those mini behaviors.
Yeah, I think about it. How do you live it out day to day? What does it look like day to day? What
Right.
happens if you're late, either at work or for a project? Is that a relaxed situation or is that a major catastrophe? What
Yes.
about what happens when you make a mistake or when someone else makes a mistake? How do people respond in your group? This is all part of how do we live out our values? What are our expectations, our agreed upon systems that we use to interact every day?
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head. So if you're asking yourself, what kind of culture do I have? What kind of culture am I trying to create as a leader? Because as a leader, it's your responsibility to hold that culture and to help manage it. And one of the
Yes.
best questions to ask to get like a temperature of what is culture is to ask the question, what happens when you make a mistake?
Mm.
So just like Elizabeth said, ask yourself, if you're at work and you make a mistake, what happens? Are there
Especially as a
fears?
leader.
Learning, especially as a leader, because leaders aren't perfect. We don't know everything, nor are we expected to,
Yeah,
right?
and I mean there's a variety of things that can happen. Are you nurturing and creating the culture where mistakes and experimentation is encouraged, even
Mm-hmm.
celebrated? Or is this a catastrophe and now you have to consider maybe looking for a new job?
Right.
Yeah.
So let me give you a
And
couple of
everything in
points
between.
and everything in between.
Mm.
So let me give you a couple points to think about like how culture can be defined. So we kind of asked that initial question, what happens when you make a mistake? That starts to help us unpack what culture is. Another aspect of culture is energy, which I
Yes.
know is a very intangible thing, but think about the energy or the emotion in a room, right? Think about the energy in an emergency room versus, I don't know what a quiet is. There such place as a quiet place in work these days? Like board meeting, it doesn't matter, like, but there's always an energy when you step into that room. So what does that energy exchange look like? Are people quiet, and do they have their heads down and everyone focuses on their own work and it's independent? Is it more collaborative? So think about the energy in the room. That starts to define what culture is. And really, culture is about how you treat the other people on your team. Like, how do you engage with them? What does that interaction look like? And do you value the team members? And what does that value look like? And all of this is framed in the context of a relationship. And do we have a future relationship? Right. So culture is about me and Elizabeth working together. And do we have a future? And if we have a future working together, what does that interaction or energy look like?
And how that will shape everything. Absolutely.
Ooh, Sherry just dropped some knowledge on us. I knew we were going to get something gold from her. So she just said, when you can hear a pin drop, that means there's an issue with openness. So have you ever
Interesting.
been in a meeting where someone asks a question or opens the floor to something and everyone's quiet? That says something about the culture, right? And Sherry's saying that often means people aren't voicing their opinions. There's a fear of having those open conversations.
Wow.
Ooh, and can you achieve anything when no one's talking? If you have a culture that says, hush, hush, keep your mouth closed, how do you think that's going to pan out when you're trying to problem solve or break into new markets or deal with challenges? Right? Culture is about, do you have the openness to be able to engage and to speak and to know that you will be received? Woo, that was gold. Thank you, Sherry.
And
Oh
we're going to
man.
get into, just if you're listening in, just a little sneak peek. We're going to get into some possible solutions moving forward. So, yeah, awesome. And she's responding right with you, interactive, awesome. Not much overtime.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
really good. So, we're going to dive into that. Thank you for that, Sherry.
So let me drop maybe one or two examples, like as we start to face the challenge of culture being this abstract thing. I want you to, for a moment, think about an industry or a company, and maybe try to think about their culture. So, for example, I used to work with a children's hospital. So the culture at a children's hospital was one of empathy. So their number one driving value was empathy. Every work we did, every program we did was centered and focused on how can we drive decisions with empathy? How can we engage with our patients and with our people through empathy? Because watching children go through something difficult can be heartbreaking. So they take that emotion and they built it into the culture in how they interact with one another. Now think about like an engineering company. Engineering companies tend to be very process focused, follow the rules, follow the procedures, right? There's one way to fix this thing, right? Like you don't need to brainstorm about how to do a mathematical problem, right? I'm not saying there's not brainstorming, but like there tends to be this like rigidity and like
Structure.
efficiency, structure. Thank you,
Structure is
right?
paramount.
One
Hmm.
is not better than the other. This is not about good and bad, right and wrong. This is about an environment that makes sense for the work that you're doing. All
I think
right.
it comes
So,
back to that having a good fit, a good match.
right. And that's the culture. That fit is culture, right? So, why is this problem so challenging for organizations? Why is building culture difficult? Why is putting time, energy, and effort into this thing so difficult? And honestly, kind of like the way we've been talking this morning, I think most of it is people just don't know what culture is. They don't know how to understand it, how to define it. And that's because it is this like abstract, intangible thing. And it does make that a difficult challenge for that reason. If I can share a story or an example for all of you, working with a team of really brilliant executives, they were working on culture, they were going through change and transition. And in the middle of, well, at the beginning of our culture workshop where we were going to work on this stuff, the workshop really broke down very quickly. And what we realized is because the leaders didn't really understand what culture was. So we couldn't start building the culture. We couldn't start fixing or evolving the culture until we really knew what it was. So
You
we
almost
had to
can't
spend that,
even talk about it.
and that's what was happening. We
Yeah.
weren't able to talk about it. So we spent some time in learning. Fast forward a few months, had the same conversation, and this team took flight. They were able to build and draw connections and understand the work and one another and how it all fits together. And it's because we took the time to understand what culture is, and then they had the tools to be able to talk about it. So that's often one of the biggest challenges with why companies are not doing this, is it's because they don't really know how to like tackle this massive intangible thing. Elizabeth,
One
yeah.
thing I can definitely share from the international sphere,
Mm,
uh, when we talk about culture, often we think about nationality or ethnicity. If someone is Austrian or they're from the US or they're Jewish or Hispanic or Muslim, it can be a religious background or an ethnic background or a national background. And this is true on a personal level, and we carry these things with us. But each company, and sometimes even each department, can develop their own culture. And it's essential to not only think about it, to talk about it, to be intentional about it, because it's going to develop whether you like it or not, whether you think about it or not. But if you're intentional about it, which is something that Michelle definitely has experience with, if you're intentional as a leader shaping this culture, it's going to unlock so many opportunities. So let's dig in. Let's dig in. If you're excited about digging in and finding out how to shape this, how to be intentional, how to unpack this, drop some icons, give us some hearts or some claps. There's some green claps I see. I want to see them happening.
Good morning, Ileana. Thank you for your comment. She said, so we got Ileana, and she says, it's intimidating to think that we are wrong or incorrect in the way we tackle culture. Many
Ooh,
companies think culture is a nationality and not like in the corporate world. So there you go. Yeah, thank you,
thank
Ileana. You hit
you.
the nail on the head. Awesome. Sherry's also commenting how willing are leaders to look and embrace the current culture, agree there needs to be change, and then make the change. So that means there needs to be an alignment with the leadership that, like, yes, this is a thing, we need to move forward. So these are all of the points that make this difficult. And Elizabeth just added another one. There's microcultures. So
Yeah.
within an organization, this team has a different culture than this team that's different than the company culture. Like, it's so much, right? Okay, so let's start to get into how we solve this problem and how do we actively like work on this. So how are some companies solving this problem? Look, first and foremost, listen to your employees. So
Mm,
one of the most common responses is to do an engagement survey. And this is how Engage was born. This was our first product that we brought out to the world. We were bringing engagement surveys to help companies understand what's happening in their culture and in their team. So this is something fairly common that I've seen in a lot of organizations. If you have participated in an engagement survey in your company, drop a like or a heart or maybe a thumbs down because maybe it wasn't a good experience, right?
yeah.
Because that happens too. Another way to begin solving this problem is I want you to think about building culture in the same way that you would build leaders.
Mm,
So it's very most of us, especially if you're in this space, or even if you don't know the people space at all and you're an operation manager scratching your head going, what do I do with this stuff? Most of us at least understand leadership development. You do a leadership program or you get a leadership coach or you go through learning. Culture works the same way. So one way to start working on your culture is think about it in the same way you develop a leader. Think about culture programs, culture coaching, culture activities, right? And you
trainings.
want to build activities, schedules to create that kind of momentum, right? So one more, how to maintain the challenges. Yep, Sherry, again with your feedback. So again, how do we, tackle this difficult, complex problem? Listen to your employees. Engagement surveys are a great way to start. Think about culture as a program in the same way we do leadership development. And then the last thing I'll say, how do we begin to solve this problem is you need a partner. You need a human capital partner. You need a psychologist. You need an expert in communication and people. You need people in your corner to help you tackle this. I think,
You
was it
can't.
Ileana said yes earlier? We don't know everything.
Mm-mm.
There's a lot of things that we don't know. And if you're an expert in whatever you are, we don't expect you to be an expert in people and culture, right? That's why Elizabeth and I exist. That's why Talk with ECM and Engage is here because we partner with companies all the time. And sometimes we're running big programs. Sometimes we're just showing up in the boardroom as a voice at the table.
Mm.
So think about how you can invite other experts into the room with you to help you tackle this massive challenge because it's something you need to constantly tend at. It's not like a one and done kind of project or experience and then okay, I'm done with culture and you can move on. It's something that is continuous, right?
Ongoing project, yeah. And it doesn't have to be a major cut down business pulling people off the floor every day project, but listen, lean in, find out what's going on, have conversations. If someone says there's a cultural problem, here
Mhm.
is an excellent opportunity to listen.
Yeah.
Not try to fix it in the first step. Listen, then reach out for experts, then reach out for more information. Try and have these conversations and move them forward. Because if you don't, well, we already talked a bit about that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about some ways that Engage can support.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. So, I mentioned already that we do engagement scales. That was the first product we put on the market. But let me tell you a little bit about what we do with our engagement surveys. We're experts in people data. So that means with our data surveys, we go above and beyond. We don't do just averages. What we do is predictive analytics. So what that means is we collect variables about culture, helping behaviors, positive mindset. We choose the variables based on the organization. And then what we do is we create predictive analytics that say which of these variables contribute the most to engagement. So that way at the end, really, we're able to say things like, if you increase helpful behaviors, you will see your engagement go up and your burnout go down. Or we'll be
That
able to
sounds
say
good.
things like, yeah, if you host more collaborative team meetings, that's what your people are looking for, not Zoom meetings, but like more opportunity to collaborate, that will increase your engagement. So basically what we're doing is we're honing in from a data perspective what's happening in your culture and what's happening in your company. And then beyond that, Engage offers advisory and coaching services. Sometimes if you are in the people space, or if you're a CEO or a COO trying to manage people, sometimes you just need to get on the phone with an expert for an hour or two, and that's it. That's all you need, right?
Just
So you
have
may
those
not need a full-blown
conversations.
program. You just need those conversations.
Yeah.
So we're here in a lot of different facets to have those conversations with you, whether they're simple one-on-one or strategic, but we're here to be those advisors for you. And we're coming in with deep psychological knowledge about people in the workplace, and we're trying to impart that knowledge and wisdom to all of our clients. So
And
that's a little bit about what that looks like.
And between you and me, I just want to tell you that's the benefit of working with Michelle and Engage, actually, because it's a boutique offering. So basically, they meet you where you are and help you ascertain what exactly do I need and what I don't. So it's not a McDonald's factory line of everybody has to do the same thing.
That's
So
right. Thank
yeah,
you. Thank you.
specialized, customized, meeting you exactly where you are. Who can ask for more than that?
And if you do one of our workshops, we start with Peter Drucker, Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast, all day, every day. So if that's one piece that you walk away with today, I hope that it's that. Now, let's start in these last 10 minutes or so. Let's start to transition into the real cost. So I love
Actually,
that
I
we
want to
end. Oh,
take
yeah?
1 minute here just to talk about if you're looking for more of a personal opportunity for personal leadership development, or how can I deal with this? How can I start even thinking about this? Maybe you're not looking for the whole company, but kind of more on an individual level. Feel free to send me a message, get in touch. I'm working on a project right now called Leadership Presence, which is
Yeah.
about showing up as a leader, showing up every single day, prepared to have these conversations so that when someone looks at you and says, it's a cultural problem, you have a system already in line, set up, ready to go with how to respond. You don't have to get defensive. You don't have to jump to solution mode. I mean, you do want to, but not instantly and not in a panic, right? It's about intentionality and being a great leader, having that presence. But let's go on to the real cost, because that's what we're waiting for. If you're
Okay.
waiting for this, you want to know more, drop those buttons. I think it's going to be, this one's going to be the support button. If you want more about the real cost, it's the hand with the little heart.
I love it.
Drop those icons, whether you're live or listening on the replay. We'll see it.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. So the real cost, I want to start with something that I learned. A leader said this to me. She said, companies hire for the culture they want, but people leave for the culture that we have.
Ooh,
So I'm
that
going to
is
say that again with
so
talk about what is
true.
the real cost? What is the real cost of not actively working on our culture? Because we hire all the time for the type of culture that we want, but when we bring those people in, they leave for the culture that we have. So what that
I'm
means is you
putting
can't
a
just
heart.
hire culture in. That's, there's an aspect to that, but that's not a magic fix, right? So when we think about like the real cost of not doing this work, it's almost challenging to talk about it because like throw a rock, culture hits it, right? Like throw a rock, meaning culture touches everything. So first and foremost, the biggest loss is talent in people. We've talked about it time and time again. You've mentioned fit several times in this conversation, Elizabeth. People leave when the culture is not healthy. When the culture is toxic, people are out. I'm not going to be here anymore. And this starts to
I do it.
create something called a talent debt, meaning all of the lost potential of what could have been with your people. So first and foremost, kind of the first thing that starts to go is people. So that's a red flag. If you start to see high turnover, or you start to see something happening in a department with a lot of people departing or absence all the time, one of the things that we look at is the culture in those moments. So talent loss is a huge real cost of not building culture. Another one is alignment. So if you're on a team and you're feeling like you're not in alignment, or like the team is just not like clicking or listening to each other and things feel rocky, a lot of times it's the underlining culture. The expectations are not clear of how I'm supposed to engage with my team. Sometimes the goals are not clear. I don't know what my role is in the team. And when I interact and engage with the culture of this company, it's not like bringing out the best in me. So if you're on a team and you're thinking like, oh, like we're unaligned, like we're not quite hitting each other the way that we want to, that can often be an indicator that your alignment is off. Welcome back, Elizabeth. We missed you for all of 30 seconds. I'm glad you're back with us. So we were just talking about like talent loss, and then we just talked about alignment. And the last thing I'll say, and then I'll invite you, Elizabeth, to add anything, is crisis and change tend to be close to impossible when you don't, or let me say that again. Change and crisis, when a company is going through change or some kind of crisis situation, if you don't have a strong culture, you're going to have a really hard time getting through that.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's typically culture that carries us through change, and culture that carries us through. Because when things hit the fan, we revert back to old behaviors. And as a company, you want those reverting back to behaviors to be embedded in the culture, right? So if you're not actively working on your culture and how people respond to mistakes and how people engage and how people communicate, when change and crisis hit, that's usually when we see an increase of challenge and crisis,
Right.
because there's really no culture to sustain the work that's happening there, and then people panic.
We've seen a lot of that in the past 5 years. Just
Very
saying,
common.
if anyone
Yeah.
wondered if crisis and change has an impact on work environment, I think we all agree.
We have all seen in the
We've
past
all
five,
seen the
the
ugly.
past several years, we have all seen the impact of what crisis and change can have on a company, right? And those companies that have the strongest culture, right?
Are
Because
able to
there's
pull ahead.
alignment of the people, they can rally together. Exactly. And that's what gets you through. When a company is going through a crisis, one of the first things I will look for with my clients is, I say, tell me the strong part of your culture. When you're in crisis and you're going through change, I say, what's working in your culture? What's the best piece about your culture? Right? So one company I was working for, we had done culture work, and I was like, the strength of your culture is collaboration.
Mm.
You have hundreds of employees that will roll up their sleeves and dive into the work. It's messy and it's difficult, but I was like, lean into that strength.
Wow,
And
that's
that
a
is a
huge
cultural
strength.
piece that will help get you through. So if you're a leader out there, ask yourself, what is the strong part of our company culture? And that's a great place to kind of start your work to create positive momentum forward. It's a great way
Absolutely.
to
Yeah.
start looking at your culture.
That's a fantastic example. I want to reach out to everyone. I see we have 13 people here right now, and I would just want to reach out and remind you that this is interactive. We want to hear from you. And right now, we're getting towards the end, only a few minutes to go. What are your takeaways? What are
Mm-hmm.
your aha moments? Was there something you heard today that you don't want to forget? Type it
Write it
in
down.
or let us know in a private message. Although typing it here is a great idea. That way, everyone gets to benefit from your insights. So, what is it you heard you don't want to forget? Let us know in the comments. And I
So
think
just to,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, no, I was
I
just going to
just
start to
don't
close
know
this
if
out.
you mentioned it before, but another thing when people talk about culture, and just to circle it back to the beginning, when you said a lot of times we have our values on a poster or in some document or maybe on an old website or something, we have our values collecting dust. But how does it lived out day to day? I know a lot of companies say, oh yeah, we're family oriented, we love families, and everyone has a right. But I cannot tell you how many calls I have with parents,
Mm-hmm.
logistically, financially, people in the prime of their career are suddenly sidelined because logistically they can't get childcare during that time. And it happens
Mm-hmm.
to men and it happens to women, or one parent has to stay home because they can't afford it. So, are you really a family oriented company if people are leaving? You said it exactly right. We hire for the culture we want. People are leaving for the culture we have. Lean in
Exactly.
and have conversations. What do people need? What do they want? Boom, the comments are exploding. Michelle,
Here
catch
we
us up. What's
go.
happening there?
Here we go. So Ileana, another brilliant HR professional, dropping some knowledge on us. She says it also has to do with the leader. A positive and happy employee will always be a productive team member. The culture in leadership trickles down.
Mm.
So if you are a leader, think about the culture that you have with your team. Odds are that's going to trickle down to everyone else. Maria, love the example of creating your own culture and not just basing it off of like a nationality or religion. The Children's Hospital example, that you create culture based on the day-to-day duties of that company. Exactly, we're getting it. And Sherry, focus on your company culture consistently. This
Oh,
is like
that's good.
fitness. Sherry said that. Yeah, brilliant. You need to work on your company culture consistently. It's just like the gym.
Yeah.
Got to get your butt to the gym. This is about emotional fitness, right? So you got to do the work consistently. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for the comments and the feedback. This is the point of these conversations. There's a lot of brilliance in this room here. And when we share the knowledge together, that's what, I mean, that's part of culture too, how we,
Synergy.
share, support, learn, and grow. So thank you to everyone who dropped some knowledge on us today. So I will say this in closing, if you are a leader who in the next 30, 60, or 90 days are looking to do something good with their culture or spend some time working on this, reach out to me and Elizabeth. If you want some one-on-one time to really focus on leadership presence around how you tackle this problem, reach out to Elizabeth. If you are a business looking to really shape and transform culture, please reach out to me. We are both excited to have these brainstorming sessions with you. That's a great way to start. Reach out, set up, we'll connect, have a brainstorming session with us, 30 minutes, to talk about this stuff.
Conversations that really make a difference.
Conversations that make a
Another
difference.
call to action I'd like to give you, a challenge, if you will. We have one
Okay.
more session left in the series. I
Mm-hmm.
want you, is it already set up for next week?
It will be soon.
It will be soon. Okay, as soon as it's ready, Michelle is going to be dropping the link in here. We want you to register, but not only that, we want you to invite someone you know, someone that you think would be either a great addition to the conversation or benefit from hearing what we're sharing and what we're talking about. Also, I want to say one thing. I'm dropping a little treat because you're here. I'm going to be dropping in a video of, I think it's Jimmy Fallon with Christopher Waltz, an Austrian actor, about Krampus and what it is and the comparison, because today is St. Nicholas Day, if you missed the pre-show, the pre-live show, and it's a comparison between Elf on the Shelf and Krampus. So if you know either of those characters, don't miss it.
Go check it out. That'll be fun. Well, we hope to see you all again. We will be here same time next week. And next week, we're going to be closing out the series and we're going to be reviewing all 4 of the components that we went through. So this is a great time to invite someone to come join if you haven't participated in some of the others, because we're going to review all of them. We want to set you all up for success going into 2024 and help you build strong people strategy to align to the work that you are all trying to do. So thank you for hanging out with us today. You guys were awesome, and we look forward to seeing you all next week.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye bye.